Yeah, so I just want to point out, like, I know we're live now, but
We're
we should have
live
been
now.
live. We're live now, but we should have been live like 5 minutes ago. Like, let's just inventory what we missed. We missed Latney's mom. We missed Latney's mom talking about her love for rap. What else did we miss?
Parents' weekend and fraternity parties.
Parents'
Yeah.
weekend, fraternity parties. How this didn't get recorded, I don't know, but
Thank God.
at least
Thank
we're
God.
here now. Well, another great Friday, another great couple editions of CMO Coffee Talk, and a first for Coffee Talk. Latney, usually it's just you and I just pontificating about the morning, but now we have Andy
Thank
Joel.
God we got some new talent.
Yeah, no, we need people are
like
tired of looking at us.
Color analysts, kind of coming in, I guess.
I would say no.
So.
This is featured guest star Andy Joels, who a couple weeks ago wrote a great piece on LinkedIn about managing headcount and headcount strategy in your marketing organization, and it was so good that we put a whole session together this morning. And Andy was kind enough to join us for both East and West Coast calls, so we wanted to have him here. Figured instead of us Latney talking about it, let's bring the man of the hour on to bring it up to summarize himself.
The man of the hour. What are the key? What do you think we covered, Andy?
Well, let's see. Look, what's fascinating is just the differences between the two calls, right? I think the second call, I took away Jedi mind tricks for marketing. It was like we spent so much time talking about, like, how do we actually figure out how to play the game in marketing budget to basically say, these are not the expenses that you're looking for, right? Like, it was very different, right? I think the East Coast session was more, I don't know, it just felt more pragmatic in trying to figure out, like, how do we solve this, how do we solve this puzzle? How do we get better at telling our story and making a case for why we should have the staff, why we should have the program. That's one recap. I'll let you guys give your recap now.
So, well, it's interesting because the original article was about sort of right-sizing your headcount.
Right.
But that, of course, quickly went to budget management and finance speak. And so,
right.
I think one of the key takeaways is it just about, headcount is a portion of your budget. So understanding your financial objectives as a firm, as a company, being very in lockstep with your CFO, whether it's, hey, we're managing our CAC, or it's rule of 40 that we're trying to get to, or, EBITDA, depending on your stage, understanding kind of the underlying financials you're trying to get to is sort of step one. And then how that kind of translates, that's going to impact your overall budget planning, of course.
Yeah, I think that CFO relationship and your ability to speak the language of the business and sort of really get in lockstep with your CFO about how he or she sees the business and how he or she wants to evaluate, headcount versus programs and really sort of build that model together, I think was a key theme for me. By definition, the CFO's math often trumps anybody else's math. But I think, Andy, one of my favorite quotes from you this morning is that even if you're good at math, you can still ask bad math questions. And I think, a lot of CFOs don't understand marketing very well, and so don't really know how to quantify it. I mean, it's one thing to say, here's the leads that turn into opportunities, and I can put a price on that. But what about your content team? What about your PR investment? What about the analyst relationships? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that are not directly measurable. But I also like what Scott Horn said. I'm a print reporter, so I got quotes for my story here. Scott Horn said, each function has its own payback metrics. And so to be able to say, I got a demand gen team, that's maybe the easier one. I've got a content team. Here's the short and long-term way that we measure their effectiveness. Same thing with anything around brand and PR. So it's not black or white, some measure, some don't, but it's understanding what's the impact it has on the business. And even more, and at least as important, if we don't get this head count, What's the opportunity cost the business? What doesn't get done? What benefit are we not delivering as marketers? Because we can't just, I think someone said it's bad if your CEO says, can't you just, and then whatever next is just like, yeah, just do it without resources. But to be clear that we can't just keep putting stuff on our shoulders, that there is a sort of a give and take that has to happen.
Hey Matt, that might be worthy of actually putting on a plaque and actually getting it in front and back of me, like, can't you just ... right? Like, that does really sum up a lot of the angst, that I think that we all have to go through. But I couldn't agree more. I mean, a lot of this is figuring out how to learn each other's language, and how to take the narrative off of the what your head count is. And we were sort of laughing about I think I came up with the term an NAFTE, which is like a North American FTE, because if you've got people who are offshore, let me translate the math into something that you're gonna think about, right? Because Latin, you were talking about if you've got 30 people abroad, it looks like, oh, you got this huge team, right? But literally they cost what 5 people cost here or something, right? So trying to get that really kind of carefully articulated so that they understand it. I think the other thing that was really interesting was just Scott Ablin's thing about trust.
Mm-hmm.
So just that, I thought was just to me it really is important that just another example of how we're trying to break down the walls and get out of our swim lanes in a good way, to say hey, look, I want to understand not just Latney pointed out sort of the whole revenue model, but the whole model, right? I want to get a full picture so that I can start to sort of speak your language, and I want to help you understand sort of what the components are in our model as well.
I loved it when you said, on the trust, how do you drive trust? You said, treat the money like it's your own. Literally think about, okay, I'm going to sign up for this. If this is my own checkbook,
right?
Would I do this? Because that's what a CFO wants to feel like, is that you're, acting responsibly. So I thought that was a good tip.
Yeah.
I also thought the 10% rule, you had a 10% rule, trying to get headcount offshore, which I think was a good idea. And I had a 10% rule, which is just cut the bottom 10% of programs. If you're not cutting periodically,
right,
that also looks somewhat irresponsible.
Yeah, I think I'll add yours, to mine. Yeah, mine was just as an MBO, outsource the bottom 10% of your job, to the team. So I have another one that I usually make my team do, which is they've got to network with a peer in a non-competitive market that looks like ours. So they have to model once a quarter. Go take somebody to dinner, even in the Zoom era, and send somebody a bottle of wine and get on a Zoom call with them and just talk to them about how they're actually doing this. But I really like yours of adding just being really disciplined of just cutting of they used to call it I think at Harvard they call it hitting the screen, right? So just cut the bottom 10%, right? Just say this is the bottom. I'm going to get rid of it and really focus on the things that work.
So back to headcount, and just to clarify, I'm not saying headcount, I'm saying cutting program spend. But back to headcount, one thing that I wanted to get to the bottom of, and I don't know if we ever did, but somewhere along the line, I heard that no more than 50% of your marketing budget should be headcount. And I don't know where I heard that, but it stuck. Is that true?
Well, it has been true for me. I mean, I've mostly in leadership roles done everything from 0 to 300 million in size, and sort of in the scope of that data set, it's really been about half. Pretty in most places. I do think as you actually get bigger, then programs are actually going to be larger, but But I think there are examples when you're really small where you could definitely have you could have a staff budget that's higher than programs. Just if you're trying to do content and the only way to do, great content is through your own staff, then, I would kind of throw caution to the wind on that rule when you're pretty small.
I don't even know if that's the right place to pivot. If you're talking about headcount versus budget, it would be better to pivot based on the function of the spend, right? And we talked earlier about the Serious Decisions model of showing sort of different stages of go to market and where you would invest in brand versus demand and awareness at different percentages based on the nature of your business and what stage you're at. And I think a lot of times in our coffee talk meetings, we tend to talk as if we're mostly talking about the acquisition side. Well, what about the retention side, right? Like, it'd be easy to argue, well, if we don't do retention, then people are just going to stay anyway, right? Not necessarily. Right. But retaining your customers is a lot more efficient than having to go out and find new ones. So thinking about the stage of your business and how much you're investing in general in those different areas, if you're retaining your customers, you don't have to spend the media cost to go and find them and entertain them elsewhere. You've got natural communication channels, right? And so maybe that's a higher percent of headcount on retention because you're not spending as much on media.
Definitely the Insight. So Insight is the portfolio investor that we work with, and they've done an awesome job with a bunch of spend benchmarks. And they definitely advise to look at what percentage is net new versus retention, and advise to look at your cost of marketing based on net new dollars you need to bring in, which I think is another just slice of it. So good session though.
Yeah. The other piece I want to just really quickly before I wrap up, Andy, and we got a couple housekeeping things, but Andy, can you talk a little bit about the calculator that you showcase at the end? We want to put a link to that in the end of this video as well.
Yeah, so I worked with the guys at Convertive who are really undertaking, I think, an ambitious effort to build a calculator around figuring out what your marketing budget should be. So I worked with them a little bit, but
they should run for president next.
It's ambitious, but I think the idea of trying to figure out like how much of this should be staff versus tech stack versus programs, and how it should scale based on some of the components in your model, right? I think the calculator is really geared towards SaaS, and so it's looking at a lot of the SaaS metrics that you see in the different benchmark studies that are out there. But I really sort of encourage everybody to play around with it. And I think like as leaders, we can make this all better if we make, a better calculator or a better tool for us as sort of a jump off point, especially if it's something that ends up getting used not just by marketers, but by CFOs, right? And other folks who are trying to sort of see like, oh, well, let me get an idea for this.
Yeah, let's all hack around in that and see if we can make the world a little bit of a better place for us marketers, right?
Exactly.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining us for this recap. Thanks so much for your generosity this morning. Real good session. I know Latney in the next couple of weeks, I think we had a couple other highly rated sessions in our survey to the participants earlier this week, and there's sort of a 2021 planning theme in some of those different areas as a lot of companies start to think kind of an eye towards what still, at least from a beginning, be a fairly unpredictable year and trying to get their arms around it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of good trending. It's going to be tough for planning, but we'll figure it out.
We'll get there. Well, I appreciate everyone listening to us here. If you are a marketing leader, if you're a VP CMO at a company and you'd want to join us, we'd love to have you. We've got over 700 people now part of the CMO Coffee Talk community. It includes the Friday morning events. We do not record them on purpose. It is a discussion. We get sometimes a little raw, a little candid amongst peers. So, but we always try to recap it here. We've got content and resources that come out of this that we put up on the Coffee Talk Content Hub. And very excited that we now have a official aligned Slack channel, the CMO Coffee Talk Slack channel, that continues these conversations on a regular basis. Andy's LinkedIn articles up there. We're going to put the calculator up there. A few of these topics that came up, we'll string in the next couple of days to continue the conversation together. But Latney, this is fun. Did your mom want to come say hi again? Does she got any rap lyrics for us?
She likes coffee talks.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. I guess it is kind of a closed group. Hi, Mom.
There she is.
Hey, I think you get up too early.
It is early. Well, you know, Mom, I gotta get up at 5 a.m. I'm in Seattle, so the first one starts at 5. That's rough. That one's rough.
That's when I would just be staying up all night and sleeping all day.
Not a terrible idea. I might have to do an all-nighter one of these times just to say that I've done it. That'd be kind of fun.
That's pretty.
Although I heard that comment and I thought, looking at both of you, apple tree, like apple does not far from the tree.
All right, let's cut this down before something happens.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Bye.
Bye.